Last week, I built an AI skill for something completely unrelated to accounting. I was looking for flights to Salt Lake City. It came back with results that were simply wrong. It told me that only WestJet served my return leg, but I knew that wasn't true. United flies that route through Denver. American connects through Dallas. Delta goes through Detroit. But until the system failed, I'd never written any of that down as a rule. Now, that correction took less than 10 seconds to say. It contained knowledge I'd built over 20 years of flying, and it was completely invisible to me until the system got it wrong. Now, I wasn't building this for my CAS practice. I was building a personal flight search skill, describing my Air Canada loyalty, my preference for direct flights, my home airport in Toronto, my fare class rules, the kind of mundane, repeatable tasks that nobody thinks of as AI work. But building that skill taught me something about context engineering that I'd been circling around for months. And here's the part that matters. The same process works for your client work. So let me walk you through what happened. The first draft looked good. Home, airport, preferred airline, fare class. The obvious stuff came quickly. I ran the skill. It worked, well, technically. It searched for flights and returned results. But it made decisions that I wouldn't have made. It missed options that I would have found. It presented information in ways that didn't match how I actually think about travel and what I needed to see. The real skill emerged from the corrections. Return tickets aren't always cheaper than 2 one-ways within North America. I don't want to take red-eye flights on domestic routes. And I don't want to leave before 9 a.m. unless there's a hard arrival deadline at the other end. If the search tool only shows one airline on a route, well, don't trust it. It probably has gaps in its inventory. Each of these was a rule I follow every time I search for flights. I just never articulated any of them because I'd never needed to. They lived in my muscle memory, not in documentation. That's the encoding gap, the distance between what you know and what your system knows. And it only closes when you see the system getting it wrong. Now, here's another detail that matters. Claude couldn't search for flights all by itself. It has no access to flight data. Well, that could have been the end of the experiment. Instead, I found 2 flight search integrations called MCPs, the connectors that give AI access to external tools and data. And I installed both in about 30 seconds each. The first one returned prices but not airline names, and the second one returned airline names that missed entire carriers on some routes. Neither tool gave complete results. But combined, they actually covered each other's blind spots. And this is the part that most people miss. The first attempt at any AI workflow will generally hit a wall. The tool can't access the data. The output is incomplete. The format is wrong. That's not failure. That's just the starting point. The practitioners who get results are the ones who treat the first roadblock as information, not as a stop sign. What's missing? What else could fill the gap? What happens if I combine 2 imperfect tools instead of waiting for one perfect one? Now, in your practice, the same pattern applies. Your AI can't easily log into Xero and reconcile directly, but it can work with exported data. It can cross-reference multiple sources, flag exceptions you have missed scanning manually. The capability isn't always built in, and sometimes you just have to assemble it. But the assembly takes minutes, not months. Every correction I made contained a rule, not a preference. A rule. United flies Salt Lake City to Toronto via Denver is a routing rule. $78 more for Star Alliance is worth it to me. $322 isn't. These are decision thresholds. Price alone isn't enough to break a preference. Timing and aeroplane earning potential matter more to me. That's a priority hierarchy. These rules live in my head. The system failing made me say them out loud. Capturing them made them permanent. The next time I search for flights, the skill won't make those same mistakes again. It won't declare a route unserved without checking both tools. It won't compare the wrong price points. It won't ignore United connections through Denver. That's the compounding flywheel. Each correction makes the system permanently better. Not just for that search, but for every search that follows. and the corrections are pretty much free. They take seconds. The knowledge they contain took years to build. Now think about your practice. How many times a day does someone on your team correct an AI output without capturing the correction? The report summary puts the revenue discussion under expenses. The client's consulting income always needs its own section because it's seasonal. That's the wrong contact for this entity. The wife handles the books, not the husband. We don't bill that client monthly. We bill them quarterly on a different cycle. Every correction is a rule. It's context. Every uncaptured rule is knowledge that evaporates when the chat window closes. Now, I'm making this point with flights deliberately. If context engineering only worked for month-end close or bank reconciliations, it would be a narrow technique worth learning for those specific workflows. But the fact that the same process, describe, test, correct, capture, works for booking flights, and for client communications and advisory prep, or for any task with embedded preferences and judgment calls, that's what makes it a general purpose capability. The mechanism is always the same. You start by writing down the obvious rules, the ones that you can articulate before the system runs. Then you test it against a real scenario. The system fails in ways that surface deeper knowledge, rules you didn't know you were following. You capture the corrections, the system improves permanently. Now, after the skill was built, we ran what I call a retrospective. 3 questions, takes about 30 seconds. What went wrong? What corrections did I make? Have I captured it? That reflection surfaced 2 more rules that the live test hadn't made explicit, and both went into the final version. So here's what I suggest for you. Don't start with your most complex client workflow. Start with something mundane. Something you do often enough to notice the patterns, but small enough that getting it wrong doesn't matter too much. In my case, it was searching for flights. For you, it might be weekly email status updates, preparing meeting agendas, processing expense reports. Build a skill for it. Run it. Correct it. Capture the corrections. Do this 3 times, and you'll understand context engineering better than any article, including this one, can teach you. You'll feel the encoding gap close. You'll notice the moment when a correction forces you to articulate something you've done instinctively for years. The question isn't whether your team has the knowledge. They do. The question is whether you're capturing it or letting it evaporate one correction at a time. This is what separates a functional AI system from one that actually compounds over time. This is what lets you build purpose-built agents that replace your paid software subscriptions. And it starts with something mundane, something you do often enough to have unconscious preferences, but low stakes enough to experiment with. So here's what I want you to do this week. Pick one repeatable task your team does at least weekly. It might be drafting a weekly email, a meeting agenda, an expense report, something mundane. Build a basic skill for it using Claude or ChatGPT. Run it. When it gets something wrong, capture the correction. Do that 3 times. Pay attention to what happens. The knowledge will start to surface. That's the encoding gap. And that's how you move from bolting on AI to something that actually compounds. Now, we've given you some additional content for newsletter subscribers on our blog page. It's called the Skill Building Starter Kit. The link is in the description. It walks you through the exact process I use for flights, step by step, so you can apply it to your practice immediately. We'll see you tomorrow.